Hello and welcome. This is Crossing Bridges Talk Show. I'm your host, Larry Montgomery Sr. It's my co-host, William.
Good evening, everyone. I'm William Lamont Montgomery. It's a pleasure to be here and happy holidays to everybody.
Happy holidays to all, one and all. Not only for Christmas, Kwanzaa, and Hanukkah,
Hanukkah.
and Feliz Navidad, and the New Year, and everything else you got out there. Have a good time.
Yes.
Really, because tomorrow's not promised. That's for sure. This week we want to talk about some of the thoughts that we want to focus on for the coming year, 2021. Now, most of us, in my age group have spent 5 years in the year 2020. So we're looking forward to getting to 2021. I don't think anybody could have scripted this year. I tell you, I just didn't see it coming. But anyway, so we want to start out. There's two topics we want to take on. We're not going to do them both today, and we're probably just going to introduce the first one. That is I guess you would call it the heart or the basis for racism in this country, the Willie Lynch letter. And then obviously next month we'll start with the Jim Crow era. And then as we get closer to the Black History Month, which we have an opinion on that, we'll talk about what we believe or how we feel about the types of things that we should be thinking about and we should be spreading throughout our own communities about the coming year, 2021. So let's start with a quick, I'll read a couple of paragraphs or so, and we'll go from there. Let's see here. The letter starts out, "Greetings, gentlemen. I greet you here on the bank of the James River in the year of our Lord, 712. First, I shall thank you, the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia, for bringing me here. I am here to help you solve some of your problems with slaves. Your invitation reached me on my modest plantation in the West Indies, where I have experimented with some of the newest and still the oldest methods for control of slaves. Ancient Rome would envy us if my program is implemented. As our boat sailed south on the James River, named for our illustrious king, whose version of the Bible we cherish, I saw enough to know that your problem is not unique. While Rome used cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along its highways in great numbers, you are here using the tree and the rope on occasions. I caught the whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple of miles back. You are not only losing valuable stock by hangings, you are having uprisings. Slaves are running away. Your crops are sometimes left in the fields too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires. Your animals are killed. Gentlemen, you know what your problems are. I do not need to elaborate. I am not here to enumerate your problems. I am here to introduce you to a method of solving them. In my bag here, I have a foolproof method for controlling your Black slaves. I guarantee every one of you that if installed correctly, it will control the slaves for at least 300 years. My method is simple. Any member of your family or your overseer can use it. I have outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and I take these differences and make them bigger. I use fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. These methods have worked on my modest plantation in the West Indies, and it will work throughout the South. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. Now, I want to stop right there for a second. Excuse me. And just, I guess, marvel at the thought process that a person or a group of people could come up with to accomplish what they accomplished, what they wanted to accomplish, as opposed to what, taking your own behind out there and minding your fields or you plowing your fields or whatever. You want free labor. And not only do you want free labor, you don't want anybody to complain about you not paying for the labor. Now, on the one side, I can say as an entrepreneur type person, I could understand free labor. But on the other side of it, not paying for it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, you're robbing human beings of their time, energy, and dreams, and you're doing it against their will to get free labor. Well, let me stop there before I go on and turn the floor to my co-host here.
I totally agree. It's the craftiness that Willie Lynch had to figure this out and to actually foresee that if they implemented that it would affect this pattern for 300 years, or more. Obviously, we know in this year that they were very successful at what they set out to do, at the detriment of people of color, Black folks. And it's important to know, as hurtful as history is, we still must know what went on, how it happened, in order so that we can protect ourselves and try to get out of this mess that they put us into, because it's like a big old ball of spaghetti. You know what I'm saying? We gotta get cut to the core of it. This is what the root is, and we may not be able to unravel it today, this year, next year, the next 10 years, but if we start pulling at it little by little, eventually we'll know enough to unravel the whole thing. And that's what I hope everybody's goal is.
Well, I certainly agree with what you thought there. I'd like to add that what they came up with is akin to perpetual motion, meaning that it's going to run once we get it started. It's going to run on its own. We don't even have to maintain it.
Yeah.
And, as opposed to, maybe working on a ball of spaghetti, and you pull one out today and whatever type of a thing. And eventually you'll get to the end and they'll all be pulled out. Here, as perpetual motion, it's never going to stop. It's going to continue. Now, that may have been in the back of their mind, but what they did actually has lasted 300 years, has damaged the Black community here in America to the point whereas it may take another 300 years if we immediately stop today. Living with the damage that they've done to us, and all of a sudden we're healed today. It'll take us 300 years to overcome the process of thinking that they have embedded in us. I mean, and we're going to go on in a second with the letter, but the goal to do anything that's going to last 300 years, I mean, that's monumental, especially when we came from a time when they had horses and buggies. Now we have rockets that go to the moon, Mars, and so on and so forth, cell phones, cable vision, all these kinds of things going on here, robotic arms, legs, or whatever, you know, uh, mechanical eyes. These things that we have today going on were not even thought of back then. They
Mhm.
couldn't even imagine it. But what they did was they caused a people to continue to perpetuate within themselves a servitude attitude to them, to find ourselves that we trust these people. So I'm not saying these people mean just white people,
Mhm.
but we don't trust ourselves.
Mhm.
That's the bedrock. You know, we may not trust white people. That's one thing. But when we can't trust ourselves
Mhm.
by design, yeah, there are people out there you can't trust. I mean, period. They
Mhm.
just lie and cheat or whatever. Um, but then you say, well, what situation could I put that person in that they would begin to trust? You know, right now, we can't find a situation that you can put most of us in that we
Mhm.
will earnestly start to trust each of us. Okay.
Mhm.
So let me go on with the next part of this here. One second here. Okay. Take this simple little list of differences and think about them. On the top of the list is age, but it's there only because it starts with an A. The second is color or shade. There is intelligence, size, sex, sizes of plantations, status on plantations, attitude of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley, on a hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, or is tall or short. Now that you have a list of differences, I shall give you an outline of action. But before that, I shall assure you that distrust is stronger than trust, and envy stronger than adult ad- adulation.
Adulation.
Sorry, adulation, respect, or admiration. The black slaves, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self refueling and self generating for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Don't forget, you must pitch the old black male versus the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark skinned slaves versus the light skinned slaves, and the light skinned slaves versus the dark skinned slaves. You must use the female versus the male, and the male versus the female. You must also have white servants and overseers who distrust all blacks, but it is necessary that your slaves, let me repeat that, but it is necessary that your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust only us. Gentlemen, these kits are your keys to control. Use them. Have your wives and children use them. Never miss an opportunity. If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. Thanks. Thank you, gentlemen. So, this strategy of pitting people against themselves,
Mhm.
pitting men against men, young men against old men against young men, is something that if you do it right, and see, and we're going to talk about this a little further in there, um, starting with the child. See, the first thing they did is they take the men and the wives and then they'll go through the family unit, and that's when they start really to dig in to getting people to think and to feel the way they want them to feel, because you learn how to think and feel from your parents, unless you're just crazy. That's a whole different story there. Okay, but and we're going to go through that here, so you'll understand as far as what this guy was saying to these people who collectively came together for this one purpose. How do we control our slaves? Now, the concept of slavery itself was not new back in the 1700s. Okay, there were slaves way back in the before Christ. Okay, what they call AD, BC, whatever.
BC. Mm-hmm.
BC was before AD.
Mm-hmm.
The death BC, before Christ. Back in BC times, they had slaves, but not all slaves were handled the same way. Okay, the king had slaves, and you were just a slave, period. And then some of the noble people would have slaves, but a lot of them were in slavery because they owed a debt. And the debt usually was they couldn't afford to pay their taxes. And they couldn't afford to pay their taxes because who cares? You didn't pay the tax, so now you work for me. All right, and once you pay off the debt, you're no longer my slave. Okay, so at least you had a way out.
Mm-hmm.
And people use different methods for getting out from under that debt. Kill the person you owe, rob somebody else and give him their money, pay off the debt, things like that. But here in America, slavery was based on color. There were no white slaves. If there were anyone who was indentured and they were white, they came over on the boat and they owed and they worked until they could pay off, or they went out on their own and they started up in another territory. Okay, so this is how the West was won. People just kept moving on and on and on for whatever reason. Okay, so here we are talking about 300 years ago. Well, actually 308 years ago. And it's still a mindset that we have to deal with. We trust each other, and it's not because I like you. I need to know if I can trust you, so that we can work together to get out from under what we're in. That's the trust part. Whether I like you or not doesn't matter, because you work with people on a day-to-day basis. You run into people who you may or may not like, but you deal with it for the common good. You're good and they're good. Bus drivers, they drive the bus. You're riding the bus. I don't care how much money you make. If you're on the bus, you're on the bus.
Mm-hmm.
You just like everybody else, no matter what you make. And so you work together. The bus driver does his job and you do what you do. But if you go in and start disrespecting the bus driver, you might find yourself in a problem,
Mm-hmm.
walking, which is not what you had planned for. But anyway, did you have anything you want to add, or should I go on?
No, I mean, you're doing great. Go ahead.
Okay. Just let me know. Okay, let's see. Let me get this back up and look at it. Okay. So now it goes on to, let's make a slave. It was the interest and business of slaveholders to study human nature, and the slave nature in particular, with a view to practical results. I and many of them obtained astonishing proficiency in this direction. They had to deal not with earth, wood, and stone, but with men. And by every regard, they had for their own safety and prosperity, they needed to know the material on which they were to work. Conscious on the injustice and wrong they were every hour perpetrating, and knowing what they themselves would do. Were they the victims of such wrongs? They were constantly looking for the first signs of the dreaded retribution. They watched, therefore, with skilled and practiced eyes and learned to read with great accuracy the state of mind and heart of the slave through his sable face. Unusual sobriety, apparent abstractions, so
Sullenness.
yeah, that word, and indifference indeed. Any mode out of the common was afforded ground for for suspicion and inquiry. Now we go to Frederick Douglass's account of the Let's Make a Slave. It says, is a study of the scientific process of man breaking and slave making. It describes the rationale and results of the Anglo-Saxons' ideas and methods of ensuring the master-slave relationship. And it starts, Let's Make a Slave, the original and development of a social being called the Negro. Let us make a slave. What do we need? First of all, we need a black nigger man, a pregnant nigger woman, and her baby nigger boy. Now, let me just stop right there for a second. The justification of calling Africans Negroes, suddenly you find yourself as a person out of your element, taking this long journey on something that you're not familiar with, going someplace you don't know, and you get there. And now you don't even know the language that these people are speaking, but they beat on you and make you do things, and you are alone, even though you're among many others. There were more slaves on a boat than there were the captives. And you say, well, why didn't they just come together and just attack them and take over the boat? They all spoke different languages and they didn't know where they were going. So if you start right there with the boat ride over, well, this is how we're going to do them. The ones who look like they understand what's going on, who might be willing to mutiny and take over the boat, we're going to put them at the bottom of the boat in the back. So they have to come through everybody else to get to us. The ones who are more meek and mild, we'll put them on the top. And we'll give them a little more food than the ones on the bottom. You see, you start doing things like that there, what they call divide and conquer. Sometimes you find that it might just be a small piece of bread to make the difference between whether you're going to work with somebody else or you're going to kill them. And these people understood that because they all spoke the same language. Simple. And so what Willie Lynch was talking about, which we'll get to, there was nothing new. They didn't do anything. They didn't think of anything that could not have been thought of. They just happened to be in a position to put it together and to make it happen. And we went into it, a lot of us, and we still find ourselves buying into it. We don't think about what we're doing when we do some things. And we've talked about that, especially spending money in our own community. We were talking about that before we even started the show. Look, I get paid, I work outside the community, I come home, and instead of buying at the local store, a brother's store, whatever, I want to go to Olive Garden, which is not in my community, and spend my money over there. I said, well, they sell Italian food in black neighborhoods too. You see, you didn't even think about buying black food. You want to buy somebody else's food and go some other community and spend your money. So the money does not circulate in our community. It just immediately comes here and goes out. It doesn't circulate one time. And that ultimately hurts the community. We can have that conversation later on. I got a lot of messages up here from Jonas, and I can't pronounce his last name here, SCHMID. And let's see what he's saying right now. Do you like Jason Strahan? I don't know who that is. Who's that? You know, Will?
Talking about the actor?
I don't know. Okay. Oh, it says don't say the N word. Okay. Let's see if I can address that. I'm reading some text, and we're all adults, and I'm not trying to insult anyone because it's not personal, because we all know how that word works. It's like my brother or my brother. You say, if I love you, it's my brother. If I got a problem with you, brother, so let's not get hung up on that, Jonas. It's going to come because it's going to come. If I say it, I'm saying it in love. And if I wasn't in love with you and I was somebody else, you should respond the way you particularly feel like you should respond to it. Okay. So let me go on. Get back to this here. Okay. Second, we will use the same basic principle that we use in breaking a horse, combined with some more sustaining factors. What we do with horses is that we break them from one form of life to another. That is, we reduce them from their natural state in nature, whereas nature provides them with the natural capacity to take care of their offspring. We break that natural spring of independence from them and thereby create a dependency status so that we may be able to get from them useful production for our business and pleasure. One of the most basic things that man understands is how to relate with animals. We think, and there are some animals that can think too. Okay. Ever find yourself out hunting and then realize that you're the one being hunted? Okay. Not a good situation. Okay. Because you swore you were smart when you came out there. Okay. But for those people who hunt for a living, they understand that concept. Animals do think. So what is your focus? Is your focus on surviving, or is your focus on entertaining yourself or pleasing your ego? Okay, that's a distraction from hunting to survive. Okay, so anyway, as the statement goes on, we break horses from their natural independence, how they deal with their offspring. And we treat blacks, Negroes, or whatever the same way. We want to break them from what's natural to them, raising their children. Now, most of these, the slaves had come from different parts of Africa, so they didn't speak the same language. Okay, some of them had different cultures, different religions, or whatever. So there were a whole lot of differences that had to be dealt with. But the one thing that was constant was family and raising your children, you see, whether it was a community type thing or if it was an individual household type thing, it still was important to raise the child right. Now, if the man was out hunting and fishing, then the woman would be home raising the child, you see. And then when the child was to become of man's age and learn how to hunt and fish then he would be with the father and he would follow the father around and learn those things that he needed to learn. Then he could go out on his own and start over. Okay. So it was fundamental to all of us, regardless what language we had, was being a parent. Okay. And they used that. They went right for it. And you'll see how it plays out. Let's see what's next here. Okay. Jonas is not saying anything else. So I don't know. Cardinal principles for making a Negro. Yeah, and I want to say this about that. It's funny how people think, and this is everybody, once we put a label on something, in our minds, that's what it is. If I say, oh, you're a young man, in my mind, you're a young man, but you actually are a mature man. I mean, literally. What are you, 40?
45.
45, okay. So, a really mature man. And so we have to be careful and true to ourselves as far as labeling things. And it goes even further. Oh, well, you took my cookies. You're a thief. Well, no, I didn't take your cookies. You dropped them. They're on the floor there. But now you've labeled me a thief.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody you talk to, oh, he's a thief. He took my cookies. No, you still haven't looked on the floor. I'm not a thief, and I didn't take your cookies. You see, so people labeling, and so yeah, you might be insulted immediately if they called you a thief. If they called you a thief to your face, but if they said it behind your back to someone else, now you've got a label that you didn't even know you had.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't. How do you overcome that? Am I going to have a conversation with every person that walks by me to let them know that, no, I don't steal cookies, I'm not a thief? You see? But somebody labeled me. And see, this is what they did with the name Negro. They labeled us something other than who we were. We were Africans. You know, if you want, where we came from. Okay. There is no Negro land. Okay. There's Africa, you know, and then there's North America, you know. Okay, so let me get that up again. Hold on. Okay. Let me see, where was I at? Oh, yeah. Cardinal principles for making a Negro. For fear that our future generations may not understand the principles of breaking both the beast together, the nigger, and the horse, we understand that short-range planning economics results in periodic economic chaos, so that to avoid turmoil in the economy, it requires us to have breadth and depth in long-range comprehensive planning, articulating both skill, sharp perceptions. We lay down the following principles for long-range comprehensive economic planning. Both horse and niggers are no good to the economy in the wild or natural state. Both must be broken and tied together for orderly production. For orderly future, special and particular attention must be paid to the female and the youngest offspring. Both must be crossbred to produce a variety and division of labor. Both must be taught to respond to a particular new language. Psychological and physiological introduction of containment must be created for both. We hold the 6 cardinal principles as truth to be self-evident, based upon following the discourse concerning the economics of breaking and tying the horse and the nigger together, all inclusive of the 6 principles laid down above. You know, I don't even think I would have liked to have been a white man back in those days, because I could not understand treating another human being as if they were a horse. You know, no matter how much I disliked you, no matter how much I wanted to kill you, treating you like a horse, where does that thought come from? You know? But anyway, okay. Did you want to say something?
I mean, you know, those are the man's outlining the systematic destruction of the Black family unit, the teachings of generations, passing it down from generation to generation. They took that and destroyed it so they can make themselves rich. Mm-hmm. And this is why it's important that each of us learns how to, we have to fight through that normal way of living that they've ingratiated us into, trained us to be. You know, everything is not, we shouldn't be looking for handouts, you know, like we are educated, we are able to be educated, we are smart individuals. You know, your brain is your greatest weapon. You know, learning, passing knowledge from one person to another, receiving knowledge from one person to another. That's why they're afraid of us, you know, because not only do we have the ability to think, read, write, you know, build nations, you know, this is something that's been ingrained in us since the beginning of time. They can't stop that. So they had to teach us ways to prevent that from happening, prevent us from communicating with one another, prevent us from learning from each other's mistakes, congregating, coming together and saying, hey, you know, I did this and I made some mistakes and this is what happened to me. You know, don't do this, my brother. Don't do this, my sister. You know, it's not all about me. You know, what can I do for my brothers, my sisters, you know, the young people coming up under me? You know, we have to get out of that it's all about me mentality. Yes, you have to eat. Yes, you have to provide for yourself. But that knowledge, that information that you've obtained, there's nothing that can stop you from saying, hey, you know what, let me call my cousin. Let me call my nieces, my nephews, or whatever, and say, hey, you know, there's some things out there, you know, try to avoid this. You know, I came across this. It really put me in a bad way, you know. So, you know, don't do this, or tell your brother, tell your sister, you know what I'm saying? Sharing this knowledge is something that they taught us not to do. And it damaged us for centuries, you know, and this is what we have to recognize the problem so then we can address it head on, because you can't, you know, well, I hope somebody else will do it. You know, who else is going to take care of your family? You know, that's what us men are for. We're supposed to be the protectors of our family. We ensure that our kind continues. You know what I'm saying? Yes, women are beautiful. You know, our sisters, you know, we love them to death. But with no Black men, our race disappears after how many years? You know? So them destroying us is destroying everybody at the same time, because nobody lives forever. You know, in the physical form, you can live forever in the spiritual, but in the physical form, if you're not able to procreate, God put us on this earth to reproduce, you know, be plentiful, go out there, build nations, you know, and if we don't work together, we're not building nothing, you know. I mean, I can try to build a house by myself. How many years it's going to take? 10, 20 years to build a nice, strong house with a good foundation? You can't live that long without shelter. We have to work together. I'm sorry. I digress.
Yeah, it, at the fundamental level, at that time, um, it worked.
Hmm.
But the problem is that now that we have made it through that, and we have gotten to the point whereas that thinking was worked then, but it don't work now because I now understand who I am and why I'm here. Um, you know, we have to deprogram ourselves. And one of the problems with that, which we a lot of us gloss over, is like this recent election. Not to talk about the results or anything, but the fact is that when our president comes into office, we're standing there talking about, well, what are you going to do for black people? And they'll say, we're doing this, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. The reality is, it's not their job to do anything for black people. You're here to work for the citizen tree. And if all citizens are treated equal, it'll work for black people.
Hmm.
We as black people need to figure out how to do what we got to do for ourselves. Everybody else has figured it out. Everybody else has written it down.
Hmm.
You don't want to pick up a book and read it, Okay, so you don't like reading. Fine. Can you listen?
Hmm. Yep.
Does your ears work? You do sign language, whatever it takes, because it's not about you and I. It's about those who are coming. And this is where we get stuck at. It's not, listen, yeah, I got to eat, but I'm not trying to say, well, I got to have filet mignon every night.
Hmm.
I can get by with a frank, you know? So there's something left there for the ones coming. Maybe
Hmm.
they'll be eating the filet mignon because they were able to overcome and deprogram themselves to really understand, look, it's not about me. It's about the next crew that's coming through. The little,
Hmm.
I take care of my kids. Well, with half of our population, the black male population, having several children out of wedlock, you're going to tell me I take care of my kids. You're lying and you come in a pit of hell because you ain't taking care of all of them. And if you are taking care of all of them, you're not taking care of them properly. Because if the government will tell you that is 17.5% of your gross pay is what's needed to take care of that kid, you do the math. You got 3 kids, you're in a hole because you can't take care of the 3 kids, yourself and your wife or your mate, and still pay taxes. So, yeah, we need to figure this out. And we need to, okay, I have to say it. Don't do as I do as I say. Because right now that's going to work better for you than it did for me. I can sit here and say, oh, go.
I mean, as you said, read a book and stuff like that, and that's important stuff. That's some, you know, that's things that I didn't do because it's not that I thought it was lame or anything. Because you have all these distractions. You got TV. Oh, this is my favorite show. Oh, they got the football game on. Oh, they got the soccer game on. Oh, they got, you know, uh, the European football. All these kind distractions. You know what I'm saying? Or there's a Miss America contest on. All these distractions. You know what I'm saying? In life, that's not making us any better than we were the day before. But we put them on a high pedestal, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't really follow sports anymore because I started with. I mean, it's just me. I can't tell you how to live, but I'm just pointing out the facts. I look at it like this: they ain't put no money in my pocket, so me sitting here watching them. Yeah, oh yeah, they did a nice move. Okay, cool. But if I'm wasting my life watching this person who's getting paid millions of dollars, what can I be doing so that I could be making millions of dollars? You know what I'm saying? I might not be able to dunk a basketball, maybe I could figure out a business or a way to invest or something like that. But I'm watching this person getting paid money to entertain me. Why? Why? I don't, it's good to be somewhat entertained, but if that's what you fill your whole day with, then you're really wasting your valuable time, because time, you can do a lot with your time. Everybody talk about side hustles and this, that, and the other. You could be that when you put away the unimportant stuff and you start growing your mind, like, taking time to maybe read a book. You ain't got to read all day, maybe an hour, maybe 30 minutes. You know what I'm saying? If you like the book, you might read more. But we need to start educating ourselves and pushing ourselves to that next level, because they're not out here. They constantly making money off of the things that we do. And they're definitely making money off the things that we don't do. Because if we don't want to do it, guess what? They're using that as their new business model. You know what I'm saying? They got somebody else up in there with their business plan to make money off of the things that nobody want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So it's like, they labeled us as being shiftless and lazy, when we probably some of the hardest working people out here. It's just we don't have the mental drive to say, look, I know I can lift this. I know I could do that. You know what? If I do this for a couple of years, it'll put me in a better financial state, and then I could do whatever. Or maybe I could do this for a couple of years, put myself through school, and then get a better job. It's like we got to change our way of thinking. I'm sorry, I get on this
Yeah,
tangent
no,
sometimes.
you're right, and that's one of the things that we need to focus on going forward, is to identify our goals and to remind ourselves that we're working towards something, and at the same time understand that it ain't about me. I'm not working towards getting rich so I can take that with me when I die.
Mm-hmm.
That don't make any sense because it ain't going. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
if I'm working towards getting rich so I can leave it for my heirs, okay, that's a drive.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense because I'm not going to be here and I can't take it with me. And if I had come into this world and I was rich, then my life would be different. What would I be doing then? Would I be working towards becoming richer? Okay. So I can leave something more for my heirs. That's a different conversation for someone who's actually rich. But
Mm-hmm.
the most of us, who are working stiffs, we need to understand that we're working towards a goal, and that goal should include the fact that it's not just about me,
Mm-hmm.
that there's more to this than just me. Yeah, there are a lot of distractions out there, and we're going to have to close in a couple of minutes, but there are a lot of distractions out there, and your point is well made. Once we allow them to consume a disproportionate amount of our time, they become idols. And we
Mm-hmm.
can talk about idolatry from a Christian perspective. I've actually written a book on that, and we'll go over that at some point in time, because this is something that it's a problem too, not only for us, but also for other folks and anyone.
Mm-hmm.
You sit there and you just all of a sudden you find yourself, oh, I want a bigger car. I want a bigger house. Now you can only live in the 4 or 5 square feet that you actually fit in, but you want thousands and thousands of square feet. Okay, if you can afford it, you can afford it. But the reality is it's just wasted space because you ain't
Mm-hmm.
doing nothing with it. If you got furniture that's sitting there, the furniture's sitting there. You can't sit in all the spaces at the same time. So
Mm-hmm.
what are your
Yep.
priorities? But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
let's leave this right here. And we're going to come back next week and talk about those principles, and also a little bit about the coming year and what goals we might want to set. If we set at least one goal that we can earnestly stay with, we'll be ahead of the game. Okay.
Okay.
Any
One quick admin note.
Sure.
For our viewers, if you'd like to make a recommendation on a topic that we can discuss, please feel free to send us a message in the comment section. And we appreciate your viewing our show. And thank you for attending.
Okay. We're going to have to work on those all these
Yeah.
statements. Step up our game for 2021.
Definitely.
Anyway, let me just say good night, good luck, God bless,
God
and
bless.
happy holidays.
Okay. Take care, everybody.